I don't believe it's with fear that we can solve this. I think it's with humanity, like trying to approach people, saying, yes, if you can't feed your family right now, it's not your job to think about sustainability. It's a bigger problem than you.
Welcome again to Conversas de Jardim, our fantastic Ageas garden, where we have the pleasure and the honor to receive very important people who have a huge impact in society. And I have the pleasure to receive today Catarina Barreiros.
Hi, thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And you're, I would say, the sustainable woman of Portugal. But allow me, before we continue in discovering who you are and what you're doing, I have these socks for you.
Oh, cool.
All right. And the first question is actually, what is the meaning of socks to you?
Socks. I mean, they're quite useful, right? I mean, it's about the utility for me. I don't know. As you can see, I'm not much of a socks wearer. Yeah, exactly. But in the winter, I always sleep with socks, which is something
you have cold feet.
I do have.
Good socks you have now for the winter.
Thank you.
Tell me, I mean, most people tell me sustainability is a word which we should not be using. Because if we do things in a sustainable way, nothing will change. Because we sustain systems and structures, and that should not be the pace. Patagonia says it's not about sustainability, it's about responsibility.
Yes.
While I see that most companies and people still use the word sustainability, I mean, should we not change that?
Well, I get your point, because we are not trying to sustain the same systems that got us here. At the same time, sustainability is about long-term sustaining life long-term. And in that way, we know we have to disrupt a bit. So in order to sustain our life in the planet, in planet Earth, we have to change systems. So I don't think it is incompatible, I don't think it's one or the other. I think responsibility is a much important word nowadays. But I would say, like in the long term, sustainability is still a key word. But probably we need to change right now to regeneration, to responsibility, in order to achieve long-term sustainability. So I wouldn't say sustainability is a word to abolish from from the dictionary. But I would say first we need to take a step back, improve our systems in order to achieve long-term sustainable development.
Mostly when people ask me my opinion on sustainability, I'm telling everybody it's a luxury problem. It's a luxury problem.
Yeah.
It's not an urgent problem. I mean, people still go to the supermarkets and they buy mangoes from Chile and they from everywhere. When I look to the percentage that companies or governments spend to save planet Earth,
nothing, right?
It's nothing.
Yeah.
So when I look to COP and all the meetings that they're having, they're flying with private jets and big and old planes to talk about sustainability and global
changing
warming.
Nothing, right?
Yes, and it doesn't. So what will we all do to put this on our screen and the radars of politicians, private companies, everybody, that it is urgent? It's not a luxury problem, it's a problem of today. We don't seem to succeed in that.
It's difficult because for the northern world, it's a problem that is, people see it or perceive it as a problem that is geographically, it's far, You think about sustainability and climate change and you think about migrations in, I don't know, Africa, or you think about drought in Syria, or you think about problems that are a bit far from us. Right now, we are seeing the emergency coming close to us. For example, in Portugal, now we see mosquitoes that provoke diseases like dengue, for example, and malaria, that were abolished, and now that's a problem we have to deal with. So I think people, as the problem is starting to affect their houses and their own families, they're starting to look at it a bit more carefully. We saw it with COVID in these 2 years. People think of it as an emergency if people near them start having problems. And we are in Europe's, we are seeing problems in migration, for example, people dying in our seas. So I think it's becoming more of an emergency, and it's very difficult right now for the images not to be very close to the people, because we have globalization, because we have media very on top of this kind of social issues and of health issues. And it's right now the oil companies cannot say like, no, this is not the truth. They cannot greenwash anymore, because the evidence is here, and scientists are being much more, they're closer to people. At the same time, people have much more important and urgent issues to deal with. They have to feed their families, right? In Portugal, we are seeing a kind of an economical crisis that is affecting, like a housing crisis and a supermarket crisis with rising prices. So
don't talk to me about sustainability.
Yes, okay. I need to think about that. I won't have tap water in 10 years in Portugal, but right now I can feed my family. So I think in order to solve sustainability long term, we need to solve social and economical problems right now. And after, it's like the Maslow pyramid, you know. Once your bare necessities are established, then you can think about something else. If you don't have the basics to survive, you can't think about something else. But I don't believe it's with fear that we can solve this. I think it's with humanity, you know, like trying to approach people, saying, yes, if you can't feed your family right now, it's not your job to think about sustainability. It's a bigger problem than you.
To go what deeper, it's not, I believe, if you might disagree with me, it's not through the investments of the people who cannot feed their families that the world will change.
Exactly. It's a systematic change.
So let's put that whole segment out of the equation.
Yes.
The segment that should act, again, does not act.
Exactly.
And they know how to feed their families.
They do.
So again, I'm repeating my question. What should we be doing to make them act?
Well, I have kind of a controversial opinion on this, because some things must be forbidden through legislation. For example, private jets. I mean, it's a huge footprint. You know, I'm not one to just restrict liberties of people just because. But right now we have a bigger issue. Maybe we need to first secure a living situation for all people, because we have a lot of people with a lot, and some people with too little. And of course, my goal is for everyone to be very comfortable, not to retrieve what people have, accomplished in their lives. But it's very unfair for me to ask someone to switch to a solid shampoo or to buy organic products, and then having someone next door flying in a private jet to go shopping in Paris, you know?
So you would not go to degrowth?
I would go to degrowth of the economy, but systematically it's not a degrowth. I would switch to circular economy. For me to have waste is to and to do nothing about it is to not consider waste as a problem. It's to have like an externality, an economical externality, but it's not an externality. It's a problem that has a cost. It has a price for the environment. It has a price for society. It's not just being taken into consideration.
Let me put you a picture of challenge.
Yes.
Okay. We have 1 billion people so we're about 8 billion people.
Yeah.
1 billion have everything.
Yeah.
We have houses, everything.
Okay.
1 billion is in the process of having more.
Yes.
Okay. And we have about 2 billion, and then we have 5 billion who have nothing.
Yeah.
Those 5 billion, they will want to progress in life.
As it should.
So, concrete, iron, materials, they all will want that.
And those generate a lot of emissions.
Okay, so we have 5 billion people who want a house.
Yes.
That means concrete. And if you say concrete, it's a lot of CO2.
Yes.
They will want a phone, all of them. That's a lot of materials. That's a lot of CO2 again.
Yeah. And mining, a lot of mining as well.
Okay, so you it's a challenging situation, right? On the one hand, we have the haves, which is a minority. The don't haves, who is a majority.
Yes.
What ethical behavior can we have to prohibit these people to progress and to have something?
I don't think we can. Because
so how will you stop global warming? Because we only have the situation today for 3 billion people.
Yes.
We have 5 billion people who want the same.
And are suffering from...
Yes, we're suffering. So, but you cannot stop them.
Yeah,
They want to have schools.
Yes.
They want to have houses. They want to have healthcare. They want the same as we want to have for us, for our children. So how will we manage that? Because these 5 billion people, this is a hell of a lot of CO2.
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer to everything. I think, of course, technology needs to move forward. Of course, decarbonization needs to be a priority because we are still investing a lot in fossil fuels, but we have countries that export fossil fuels that are 100% renewable in-house. So it is possible to be 100% renewable, and for the majority of the world. And if we take, because the density, the carbon density of energy right now, about 75% of all CO2 emissions comes from the energy sector. So it's a sector we need to change right now.
How to get to system change? Because otherwise we can all continue to analyze, and we all know that, and we are good in analyzing, and then we're saying, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we need to inform people. I believe it starts with people, with individual. This is a very, of course, arguable position, but I think it starts with informing people, and informing in a light way. It's kind of, I truly believe this. This is why I have my own page where I inform people of what they can do. Because I believe when people understand what they can do and why, the small actions that in the big scale change nothing. But once they do, they know how, like, why should they choose a solid shampoo instead of a liquid one? And then if I tell them, well, you should try this shampoo. They already buy shampoo. They know shampoo. You use shampoo every day. Change to this one. And they will ask me why. I say, well, you see the packaging, it is much smaller. So when you travel with a solid shampoo instead of a liquid one, you can fit like 6 solid shampoos where you put one liquid. So the system, like the transportation is like 6 times more efficient. And this is good. And then people start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, it is more efficient. So we tell people this is an easy change. And then they go, okay, but I went and researched like the emissions, like the emissions from transportation, and I understood some of the problems is much higher than like transporting shampoos, much more important. And I'm like, yeah, we can talk about like the international aviation not being considered in the Paris Agreement, for example. And then they're like, what's the Paris Agreement? And we can talk about the Paris Agreement, and we can talk about the COPs, and we can talk about. So we start small, in a very comprehensive language to everyone, maybe with some humor in the mix, and then people will become more demanding. Because if they can switch from a shampoo to another, maybe their politicians can do better. Maybe people that represent the people, maybe the governments, maybe companies can do better. And we see a lot of companies that are trying to change.
So regulation is your friend?
I think regulation should be your friend. For example, we saw something very unusual happen in France a few months ago. They banned international aviation, local aviation. They were able to do that because they invested in railways, of course. Because in Portugal right now, if someone forbidden aviation, it would be a nightmare because we don't have an alternative way of transportation, like even to go to Madrid. It's like 5 hours by car, and by train is like...
Let's keep it to Porto.
Or Porto. And trains are full of people, and they are not efficient, and they don't get us anywhere near...
Let's go to governance.
Yes.
Another part. How can we get a better governance in place in companies and in governments?
Well...
Because, like in all places, board members are chosen by the shareholders.
I mean, again, controversial opinion, but sometimes we had a very good example of a B Corp. I'm not going to name the company, but they had a really, really good CEO that was laid off because the shareholders said, and this is quoted in every media, he cared about sustainability way too much. So
he's now the president of the Sustainable Life Risk Board.
He is. When we see money in front of the planet, we have a problem because that is not sustainable money. That is not money that in the long term will make us prosper. So you were saying before, if I believe in degrowth, I strongly believe we should prosper, but not necessarily grow. we need to think beyond the year-to-year graphs. We need to think beyond that. Yes, the company in question started growing a bit, like starting steadying their growth. But in the long term, it still allows them to make enough profits or enough money to sustain their operations, to pay everyone a fair amount of money, because they were a B Corp, so they needed to respect those fair payments and everything. And the amount of money they were making still covered for everything. They just weren't like growing as much as other FMCG companies at the time. And I think the stakeholders, the shareholders, most of the times get a bit greedy. Of course, because they invested their own money and they want return on their money. And everyone should be fairly compensated for the risk they're taking, of course, that's not a question. But after every compensation being made, why growing and growing and growing and growing just for the sake of numbers at the end of the year?
Well, I don't know, but it came from 1943, the growth.
Yeah.
In 1943, while the Second World War was busy, the Americans said, if we want to defeat the Russians, there's one thing we can defeat, and it's growth.
Yeah.
So that's why they put GDP in place.
Yes.
Growth in GDP, growth in dividend payments, growth in top line, and growth in profit, because they knew they could beat the Soviet system in that. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's also in 1943 that people put in the balance sheet people as a liability, not as an asset. They considered people as a cost, not as an asset, as something valuable to be valued. And so everything starts from there. And of course, in my opinion as well, today we see the limits of what we can do in growth. And everybody's asking the question, when is how much enough?
That is the question.
I know.
That is the question.
What makes you irritated?
Oh, many things. Right now, political inaction is one of them. It makes me very, very irritated to see that people are dying in the Mediterranean Sea, and it's against the EU policies to leave migrants on the sea to die, and countries are still doing that, pretending they don't see, and the European Union is not making them leave the Union, which is something I don't understand how it's possible. It makes me very, very irritated, and this is, of course, a structural problem. It's the system we live in, but I don't agree that people that don't agree with the basics of the European Union, that is peace, security, and how do you say? It's not empathy, but like to live with other people to respect human life. They are still being elected to go to the European Parliament. So if someone does not agree with the principles of the European Union, I don't think they should have a seat in the European Parliament.
No, privately, what are your hobbies?
Well, I like...
Except of growing potatoes and...
Okay, no, I play the piano. Music helps me a lot. Music is a very good, a good place for me when I'm feeling very, very eco-anxious.
Imagine, how would you look upon your life if you did not have had your moment of enlightenment?
Well...
Because you could have been the biggest polluter of the world.
I was on the dark side already.
so, I mean...
Yeah.
And then comes the question, how to have these moments of enlightenment to more people?
There is a sentence that Steve Jobs said in a commencement speech in Stanford a few years ago, where he said something like, life is about connecting the dots. And I don't believe I had a moment of enlightenment. I think there were a lot of moments in my life that were important, and then right now, looking back, I can identify them. Being born in a family that loves me, and that has like social justice for my family is something very, very important. My father usually laughs when I say that food waste is an ecological crime, because he says before being an ecological crime, it was already a social crime. He was born in Africa, and he says like, we don't value the skins of the food here, but it's food, it's not waste. It's a social issue before being an ecological issue. So I was born into a family of my parents are both teachers as well. I have a disabled brother, and this also helped me be a bit of an activist since I was very young, because he was born before me. And when we were passing and people were like looking at my parents saying, "What's wrong with him?" And I would go with like 4 years old. I was like, "What's wrong with you?" Like for making that question. And my parents would be like, they would not apologize for my behavior. They would be like, "Well, children say the truth, right?" So I think being born in this family made me very aware of the world around me. And also my parents always said that the world doesn't owe you anything because you were born with so much already.
That's okay. During your life, you were seeing there were things happening with that moment. You did not have enough dots to make the connection, and later on you had many dots to make the connection. Let's fast forward move now. You're 123 years old.
150,
yeah,
okay.
Precisely, in 7 months. You're laying on your bed and you're close to your last breath. What will make you happy?
I think it's the same things that make me be able to sleep at night. Is knowing that every day I try to live by my values. I try to live by justice. I try to do my best. I fail a lot of times, but I can also empathize with myself when I'm having a bad day and eat some chocolate that is not fair trade, for example.
Belgian chocolate.
Well, Belgian chocolate, of course, Belgian chocolate. Is there any other chocolate,
No.
really? No. I think it's knowing that I tried my best to be coherent with the things I believe in, not trying to make excuses to comply with values I don't agree with.
I mean, here, I would say that in Ageas sustainability, we still call it sustainability, but we are also thinking about system change, and what we can do is very important, because we believe we have a big role to play in society with all the customers we have, and then also in the processes, the products, and how we can bring more inclusion into society in the protection of this site. Just to end, I mean, what is the question I should have asked that I didn't ask you?
Oh, I don't know. You asked some really good questions that made me think a lot, which is very good. I don't know. I always ask myself if I'm doing enough. And the answer is no. I don't believe I am doing enough, because there is so much more to do. But I also try to understand that I am doing what I can right now, because I also have a family, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that is a very striking question for me, if we are doing enough.
Well, anyway, I would like to thank you for this very interesting interview and this discussion. And I would like to thank you for your energy and your input of helping saving the world, because I think we should actually, if technology would help us, we should clone you 1,000 times, and then we have many people who
we should clone scientists, I think.
No, okay, scientists and you, and that would help us, multiplying the people and input to save the world. Multiply
important CEOs that actually believe in this as well. Multiply. I am honest. Ageas is an example, and you are an example, because most people don't understand the impact a well-managed company that invests in inclusion, that invests in health, in safety, in climate change mitigation. That is, I mean, it begins with people, and then it's contaminated to companies, and then companies have a lot of pressure they can make as well.
Then you're my sister and I'm your brother.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We're together. Thank you so much.